I paid the $85,000 of my daughter's student loans. I worked double shifts for years, eating beans and rice, just so she could start her life debt-free. The day I needed $500 for my heart medication, she looked at me without blinking and said, "Mum, you're 78 years old. Why do you want to keep spending money?" And while I was close to dying, she took my house. I am 78 years old, and today, I'm going to tell you how the daughter for whom I sacrificed my entire life left me to die at the door of my own home. But before I get to that betrayal, I need you to understand everything I gave for her. My name is Hope. What an irony, right? Because for a long time, I lost all hope in humanity, in my own flesh and blood. Let me take you 15 years back, to when Natalie, my only daughter, ran into our little house in Queens, New York, with a letter in her hands. Her eyes were shining with an excitement I hadn't seen in her for years. "Mom, I got accepted into medical school." I remember I was making a batch of chili on the stove. The smell of the simmering tomatoes filled the kitchen. I dropped everything and hugged her so tight I could feel her heart beating against my chest. My girl was going to be a doctor. After becoming a widow at the age of 51, after cleaning offices for years, after selling baked goods on the weekends, finally something good was coming into our life. "You did it, my love. I'm so proud." What I didn't know was that the acceptance letter came with a price: $170,000 in student loans, 6 years of medical school, books, scrubs, materials, transportation. Natalie sat at the worn wooden table where we had eaten dinner together for so many years. "Mom, it's too much money. Maybe this isn't the right time." "Don't talk nonsense," I interrupted her. "We'll find a way. We always do." And that's how my second job started, or rather my third job. From Monday to Friday, I cleaned 3 houses from 6 o'clock in the morning until 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Then I rushed to my shift at a fast food diner in Manhattan, where I washed dishes until 11 o'clock at night. On the weekends, I made and sold apple pies, chocolate chip cookies, and blueberry muffins. I got up at 4 o'clock in the morning to have the oven ready. My hands, oh my hands, they were covered in calluses, burns, and cracks from the bleach and cold water. But every time I saw Natalie studying late, surrounded by huge anatomy books, I felt that every blister was worth it. Do you know how many double shifts I worked? I don't even know myself. I lost count after the first year. My life became a routine of survival. Work, pay, sleep 4 hours, repeat. I stopped going to the doctor when the pains in my chest started. "It's just nerves," I told myself. There was no time or money for my aches and pains. I remember once Natalie found me asleep on the couch with my restaurant uniform still on, smelling of grease and onions. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. I had just gotten home. "Mom, this is too much. You don't have to kill yourself for me." I caressed her face. "My girl, I've already lived my life. Now it's your turn. I'm not going to let you lose this opportunity." But now, with everything I know, I wonder if at that moment she felt gratitude, or if she was just calculating how much my sacrifice was going to cost her. For 6 full years, I paid every dollar of that university. $150 here for books, $300 there for clinical scrubs, $500 for a specialized course. When I didn't have enough, I pawned things. First, it was the gold chain my late husband gave me on our anniversary. Then, my mother's silver earrings. I ate beans and rice almost every day. White rice with a fried egg if I was lucky. Black coffee with day-old bread that the bakery on the corner gave me. Sometimes, Mrs. Carroll, my neighbor, would leave a plate of leftover roast chicken on my doorstep. We both knew it was a lie, but I accepted it with all the dignity I had left. Natalie graduated with honors. I watched her cross that stage in her white gown and cap, receiving her degree as a medical doctor. I cried so much I could barely see her. They were tears of pride, relief, and exhaustion. We did it, Mum. We did it together. Together. That word gave me strength to continue. Then came 3 more years of specialization, another $80,000 in debt. By that time, I was 70 years old, and my body was starting to charge me the price of so much abuse. But I couldn't stop. It was so close. Finally, at 73 years old, I made the last payment. $170,000 in total. Every penny earned with the sweat of my wrinkled brow and my ruined hands. Natalie was already an established cardiologist, working at a private hospital in Beverly Hills. She had married Robert, an architect with a good last name and a better bank account. They lived in a beautiful house in Bel Air. They had 2 children, Steve, who was 14, and Amy, who was 12. I was still in my little house in Queens, the same house where Natalie grew up, where her father died of a heart attack when she was 15. 2 small bedrooms, a patio with my lemon tree and my geraniums, and that kitchen where I could still smell the breakfasts I had made my entire life. I thought I could finally rest, that Natalie, now successful and debt-free, would help me a little. I wasn't expecting her to support me, just, to call me more often, to visit me, to ask me how I was. But the visits became spaced out. First, it was once a week, then every 2 weeks. After that, only on holidays, and always in a hurry. Sorry, Mum. I have surgery early tomorrow. Mum, the kids have homework. Mum, Robert and I have an important dinner. I nodded, smiled, and made their favorite food in the few hours they gave me. And when they left, I was left alone in that house that suddenly felt too big, too silent. But I didn't complain, because a good mother doesn't ask for anything in return, or so I believed. Until my heart really started to fail, and I discovered that she had already started planning how to get rid of me. But that part comes later. If you want to know how my own daughter betrayed me in the cruelest way you can imagine, stay until the end of this story, because I need someone to know the truth. And if you have ever felt that you gave everything for someone who didn't value it, this story is also for you. Subscribe to the channel to continue following real stories that need to be told. I thought I was building her future. I was financing my own destruction. For the first few months after I finished paying her debts, I felt light for the first time in 15 years, as if I had carried a sack of cement on my back for so long that I no longer remembered what it felt like to walk straight. Natalie seemed like the perfect daughter in everyone's eyes. Successful, elegant, always with the right words at family gatherings. When my cousin Rachel asked about her, I puffed out my chest with pride. She's a cardiologist, at the Cedar-Sinai Hospital. She treats only important patients. What I didn't tell them was that I hadn't seen her in 2 months. The phone calls became more spaced out, colder. When I called, she always answered with that tone you know when someone is busy and you are an interruption. Mum, I'm with a patient. I'll call you later. But later never came. When we finally saw each other, something had changed in her look. She was no longer the girl who hugged me with gratitude. She was a hurried woman, checking her watch every 5 minutes, sighing when I told her about the lemon tree or about Mrs. Carroll. Mum, you shouldn't be working so much anymore. You've done enough at your age. That phrase. The first time I heard it, it filled me with tenderness. I thought she was worried about me, that she finally wanted to give me back something for everything I had given. How naive I was. One Sunday, 3 months after the last debt payment, Natalie came to visit me with Robert and the children. It was rare for them to come all together. I prepared Thanksgiving turkey with mashed potatoes and gravy. I woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning so everything would be perfect. Steve and Amy barely hugged me before taking out their phones and sitting in the living room. Robert was polite, as always, but distant. Natalie inspected the house with a look that I couldn't decipher at the time. "Mum, this house is getting too big for you alone." I poured myself a glass of water. My hands were shaking a little. They had been shaking frequently lately. "It's my home, my love. You grew up here. Here." "Yes, I know," she interrupted me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "But think about it. 2 floors, stairs, that backyard that needs to be maintained. It's a lot of work for a woman your age." Robert coughed uncomfortably. Natalie shot him a quick look that I couldn't interpret. "Besides, Mum, with all the effort you made for me, it's time for you to rest, to live peacefully without worries." There was that phrase again. "You've done enough," as if my useful life had come to an end, as if I had fulfilled my function and was now redundant. But I still didn't see the trap. That night, after they left, leaving the kitchen full of dirty dishes that I washed alone, I sat on the living room couch. The same couch where I rocked Natalie when she was a baby, where I read her stories, where I consoled her when her father died. Something heavy settled in my chest. It wasn't just tiredness. It was a feeling I didn't want to name yet. The following weeks, Natalie started visiting me more frequently, but not to spend time with me. She came with excuses. "Mum, let me check your documents. You need to have everything in order." "Mum, where do you keep the house deeds? They should be in a safe place." "Mum, you should get a complete medical checkup. I'll pay for it." That last offer surprised me. It was the first time in years she had offered to pay for something for me. I accepted, because I really felt unwell. The chest pains had become more frequent. I got tired climbing the stairs. Sometimes I ran out of breath just hanging up the laundry. "It's just accumulated stress, Mum. Years of overworking," she told me, while driving her new SUV towards the hospital. "But we're going to check you out thoroughly just to be sure." They did tests that I never could have paid for alone. Electrocardiograms, blood tests, X-rays. Natalie knew all the doctors. They treated her with deference, with respect. "Dr. Smith, how nice to see you here." I felt proud again. That was my daughter, the girl for whom I sacrificed everything. A week later, she called me to give me the results. Her voice sounded strange, controlled. "Mum, I need you to come to my office. We need to talk about your heart." The diagnosis was like a bucket of ice water. Early-stage heart failure. Nothing critical yet. But I needed medication, regular checkups, care. "And how much does the treatment cost?" I asked, feeling the floor moving under my feet. Natalie closed the results folder. She leaned back in her chair at her desk, that mahogany desk with her name engraved on a golden plaque. "Dr. Natalie Smith, cardiologist." "Mum, don't worry about that now. The important thing is that you take care of yourself." "But I need to know, honey. I still work at Mrs. Johnson's house and—" "Exactly, Mum. You shouldn't be working anymore. Look at you. Your body is paying the price." She was right. But I also had to eat. I had to pay for electricity, water, gas. My Social Security retirement barely covered the basics. "There are cheaper medications," she said after a long silence. "Not as effective as the ones you really need, but they could help a little." I felt something break inside me, something small, like a dry branch. "And the others? The ones I really need?" Natalie sighed. That sigh that was becoming familiar to me, the sigh of someone who has more important things to do. "They're expensive, Mum. Almost $1,000 a month, and you would have to take them for the rest of your life." the rest of my life, which, according to my sick heart, might not be that long. Look, she continued, softening her voice. What you need is to reduce stress. Stop working. Simplify your life. That big house requires a lot of maintenance, a lot of expenses. Have you thought about moving to something smaller, more manageable? There it was again. The house. Natalie, that's my house. Your father's house. Where you... Yes, Mom, I know. But Dad is no longer here. And you're alone. It doesn't make sense for you to cling to a place that is consuming you. I kept quiet. Because maybe she was right. Maybe I was just a stubborn old woman clinging to the past. Think about it, she said, and patted my hand. A pat, like you give a dog. For now, take these basic medications. We'll talk about the full treatment later. I left that office with a prescription for second-rate medicines and a new weight on my chest that had nothing to do with my sick heart. On the way back home, on the crowded bus, I allowed myself to think the unthinkable. My daughter didn't want to help me. My daughter wanted... What? What did she really want? I arrived home as the sun was setting. The lemon tree cast long shadows over the yard. I touched the walls of my kitchen, the same walls that saw Natalie grow up, that held echoes of laughter and tears and lullabies. Maybe it's me, I said out loud. Maybe I'm selfish for wanting to stay here. But deep down, in that place where we keep the truths we don't want to see, I already knew that something wasn't right. I just didn't imagine yet how far her betrayal would go, because the worst had not yet arrived. My heart was failing, but hers was already dead. 2 months after that diagnosis, my body started to charge me the full bill. It was no longer just occasional aches. Now I woke up in the early mornings with a tight chest, as if someone was sitting on me. My legs swelled so much I could barely put on my shoes. One morning, I couldn't take it anymore. It was 3 o'clock in the morning when the pain became unbearable. I called Natalie with trembling hands. Mum, what's wrong? Her voice sounded irritated, sleepy. My love, I can't breathe well, my chest. A silence, then a long sigh. Did you take your pills already? Yes, but then it's anxiety, Mum. Take a deep breath. You can't be calling me at these hours for every little discomfort. I have surgery at 7 o'clock in the morning. And she hung up. I stayed sitting on the edge of my bed, phone in hand, feeling like I was drowning. Not from lack of air, from something much worse. The next morning, Mrs. Carroll found me passed out in the yard. She was the one who called the ambulance. She was the one who accompanied me to the public hospital. Not Natalie. When my daughter finally arrived at the hospital 6 hours later, she had that expression I already knew well, annoyance disguised as concern. Mom, I told you it was nerves. Look at all the fuss you caused. The doctor who treated me spoke clearly. My heart failure had advanced. I needed the full treatment. $1,000 a month for medication, checkups every 2 weeks, immediate lifestyle changes, and above all, the doctor added, you need to avoid stress, no heavy work, 0 worries. Natalie listened, like the professional doctor she was. But when we were alone, her mask slipped a little. Mum, this is getting out of control. You can't afford that treatment. I have my own expenses, the children, the mortgage. I'm not asking you for anything, I whispered. My voice came out weaker than I wanted. I know, but you can't continue like this either. Working, stressing yourself out, living alone in that huge house that requires constant maintenance. There it was again. The house. I've been thinking, she continued, pulling her chair closer. And I think the time has come to make smart decisions for your own good. She took some papers out of her bag, official papers that she had prepared, as if she had been waiting for this moment. This is a power of attorney, something temporary just so I can help you manage your affairs if something happens to you, your accounts, your documents, the house. My heart skipped a beat, and this time it wasn't because of the illness. I don't understand, honey. Why do you need that? Because you have to be realistic, Mum. You're 78 years old, and your heart is no longer responding well. If something happens to you, who will be able to act fast? Think about the children, about your inheritance. Everything must be in order. She used my grandchildren, Steve and Amy, the same children who barely paid attention to me when they visited, but who now appeared in her speech as urgent reasons to affirm. Besides, she lowered her voice more, looking around as if someone could hear us. If you sell the house and move to a small, more manageable place, you could use that money for your treatment, to live out your last years in peace. Last years, she said it like that, without filter. I don't want to sell my house, Natalie. I'm not saying you have to sell it now, just that we have everything prepared, as a precaution. Something in her tone, something calculated, rehearsed. But I was tired, scared. I had just fainted. My heart was a time bomb. It's just for safety, Mum, so I can help you if you can't make decisions. You trust me, right? That question was the perfect trap. How could I say no to the daughter for whom I sacrificed everything? How could I admit that I was starting to doubt her? I signed. With a trembling hand, with a lump in my throat, I signed that damned paper. Natalie smiled, a smile that should have warned me about everything. She put the documents in her bag with quick, efficient movements. Perfect. Now rest. I'll take care of everything. That night, alone in my hospital bed, with the sound of the machines beeping around me, I remembered something I had forgotten, or that I had wanted to forget. 2 weeks before, when Natalie was checking my important documents, she found my wedding ring, that white gold ring with a small diamond that my husband gave me over 50 years ago. Mum, do you still wear this? It's too heavy for your swollen fingers. She took it between her fingers, evaluating it like someone evaluating merchandise. You should keep it in a safe place. Or better yet, let's sell it. You could get about $1,500. It would help with your expenses. I took it off that afternoon. I told her yes because I needed money for the upcoming doctor's visit, because she convinced me it was the logical thing to do. I watched her take it away, the last physical piece of my marriage, of my youth, from when someone loved me without asking for anything in return. Don't worry, Mum. I'll get you the best price. I never saw that money. When I asked her about it weeks later, she said she had used it to pay for some urgent expenses of mine that she had covered. She never specified which ones. Now, lying in that hospital bed, I finally understood what was happening. My daughter was not taking care of me. She was stripping me of my assets. Slowly, methodically, with the precision of a surgeon who knows exactly where to cut. And I had just given her the legal scalpel to finish the job. She convinced me it was for my own good, while she planned to keep everything. I left the hospital a week later with a bag full of cheap medicines and a signed paper that took away control of my own life, though I didn't know it yet. Natalie became more present, but not in the way a mother would wish. She came to check things, to move papers, to take pictures of the corners of my house with her phone. Just documenting the current condition, Mum, for the insurance. What insurance? She never explained. One afternoon she arrived with Robert and a man she introduced as a property appraiser. She didn't ask me if they could come in. They simply did. The man walked through my house with a tablet, taking notes, measuring walls, evaluating every corner, as if I wasn't there, as if it wasn't mine anymore. Mum, it's just to get an idea of the value, just in case. Just in case what? But I didn't ask anymore, because every time I did, Natalie sighed with that weariness that made me feel like a burden. The appraiser left a folder. Natalie quickly put it away, but I managed to see the number, $350,000. I couldn't sleep that night. My little house was worth that, the place where I raised my daughter alone, where I survived my husband's death, where every wall held priceless memories. On Sundays, Natalie started bringing Steve and Amy more often, but something had changed in how they treated me. "Grandma, is it true that you're moving soon?" Amy asked while playing with her phone, without even looking at me. "Moving? No, my love. Who told you that?" "Mum said you can't take care of yourself anymore, that you're going to a place with nurses." I felt the floor open beneath my feet. I looked at Natalie, who was making coffee in my kitchen as if nothing had happened. "Honey, what is she talking about?" "Oh, Mum, kids confuse things. I just mentioned that there are some very nice residences for seniors, just in case you ever need one." But Amy hadn't confused anything. Her words were too specific. Steve didn't even participate in the conversation. He was engrossed in his video game. These were my grandchildren, the children for whom I was supposedly organizing my inheritance. That afternoon, after they left, I called my cousin Rachel. I needed to talk to someone who really knew me. "Hope, are you okay? You sound strange." I told her everything. The papers, the appraiser, the constant insinuations about moving. Rachel was silent for a long time. "Cousin, I don't like this at all. Natalie is planning something." "Don't say that. She's my daughter. She's just worried about me." "Worried? A worried daughter helps you with your medicine. She doesn't pressure you to sign papers." "Be very careful, Hope. Very careful." But I still didn't want to see. Because accepting the truth meant accepting that I had sacrificed 15 years of my life for someone who was only waiting for me to die to take the little I had. The following week, Natalie arrived with a new folder. She was smiling, but it was that professional smile she used with her patients. "Mum, I found the perfect solution. Look." They were brochures for senior living residences, places with nice names: Golden Sunset, Gardens of Peace, Hope Villa. "This one is very good. It has 24-hour nurses, meals included, recreational activities. And the best part, it only costs $800 a month. With what we would get from selling the house, you could pay for full years in advance and have money left over for your medical treatment." Every word was like a stab. "I'm not selling my house, Natalie." Her smile hardened. "Mum, be realistic. You're 78 years old, a failing heart. How much longer do you think you can take care of this place? What if you fall down the stairs and no one finds you?" She was using my fear, my age, my illness, everything that made me vulnerable. "In a residence, you would be safe, cared for. I could sleep peacefully knowing you're okay." But it wasn't for me. It was never for me. "Think about it," she said, leaving the brochures on my table. "You don't have to decide today, but you also can't keep denying reality." When I closed the door behind her, I allowed myself to cry everything I had held back, everything I didn't want to admit. My daughter was kicking me out of my own house, slowly, methodically, with arguments that sounded reasonable to anyone listening. "It's for your own good, Mum." But when does someone's good involve stripping them of everything they love? I sat on my couch, the same one where I rocked her as a baby, where I taught her to read, where we cried together when her father died. And in that moment, something in me began to change. Fear began to transform into something different, something I hadn't felt in years, rage, because maybe my heart was failing, but my dignity was still beating strong. She turned me into a burden in front of everyone who knew me. My sister Laura's birthday was the day everything went public. She was turning 75 years old and organized a family lunch at her house in New Jersey. The whole family would be there. Cousins, nephews, and nieces, even some close neighbors. Natalie insisted on picking me up. "You can't go alone on public transport, Mum. What if you get dizzy?" I should have seen the trap. We arrived late. Everyone was already sitting around the tables in the garden. The smell of barbecue ribs and freshly made sauce filled the air. A live band was playing in the background. It was a cheerful party, until Natalie opened her mouth. "Sorry for the delay. Mum took a long time to get ready. You know how it is. At their age, everything takes 3 times as long." Awkward laughter. I felt the heat rise to my face. I sat next to my cousin Rachel, who squeezed my hand under the table. During lunch, I tried to participate in the conversations, to laugh, to be myself. But Natalie was watching me like a hawk. When I told an anecdote about Mrs. Carroll, she interrupted me. "Mum, you already told that story 3 times. Do you remember?" It wasn't true. I had never told it there. But everyone looked at me with that expression, that mixture of pity and discomfort that people give when they think you're losing your mind. "Oh, sorry," I murmured, looking down at my plate. Later, my niece Sarah asked about my house, about my lemon tree. Before I could answer, Natalie intervened. "Oh, Sarah, let's not ask too much about that. Mum gets sentimental. She's going through a difficult process of accepting that she has to let go of certain things." Rachel dropped her fork loudly. "Let go of what things, Natalie?" "Well, the house is too big for her alone. We talked about more manageable options, places where she can be cared for, accompanied." The silence fell heavy on the table. Everyone was looking at me now, as if I were a child incapable of making my own decisions. "Hope, is that true?" Laura asked with genuine concern. I opened my mouth to speak, but Natalie was faster. "Mom is still in denial. It's normal. Seniors cling to their routines even if they are dangerous for them. As a doctor, I see it all the time." Doctor. She used her title as a weapon, as unquestionable authority. "Her heart is very delicate. She can't be alone, climbing stairs, carrying things. One slip-up and—" She snapped her fingers. "That's why I'm looking for the best for her." My sister Laura nodded, convinced. "It's good that you care so much about your mother, Natalie. Not all daughters are like that." I felt nauseous. I wanted to scream that everything was a lie, that she wasn't taking care of me, that she was stripping me of my assets. But who would believe me? There was the successful doctor, worried about her poor, sick and stubborn mother. And there was I, the senile old woman who wouldn't accept reality. Robert, sitting at the other end of the table, didn't participate in the conversation. He was looking at his beer with an uncomfortable expression. When our eyes met, I saw something there. Guilt, maybe. Or perhaps just discomfort. After lunch, while the women were cleaning up the kitchen, I overheard Natalie talking to my cousins in the hallway. It's hard to see her like this. A few days ago, she called me at 3 o'clock in the morning for a pain that turned out to be gas. She left the stove on all night again. She has moments of lucidity, but also confusion. Lies. Everything was lies, but said with such conviction that even I doubted my own memory for a second. "Poor thing," I heard someone say. "And poor you, Natalie. What a burden." Burden. That word cut right through me. Rachel found me crying in the bathroom. She hugged me tight without saying anything, because there were no words for this. "She is destroying you in front of everyone," she finally whispered. "She is building a narrative so that when she takes your house, everyone will think she did the right thing." She was right. Natalie was planting the story. Senile mother, sacrificial daughter. When the time came to take everything from me, no one would question anything. Everyone would say, "Thank goodness Natalie was there to take care of her." On the way back home, Natalie was driving, humming a tune, happy, satisfied with her performance. "The party was nice, wasn't it, Mum?" I didn't answer. I looked out the window at the streets of the city where I was born, the city where I built my life, where I buried my husband, where I raised this woman alone, who was now treating me like an obstacle. "Mum, don't be angry. I'm just being realistic. Someone has to be." When we arrived at my house, I got out of the car without saying goodbye. I heard her voice behind me. "Think about what we talked about. Time is running out, Mum. Your heart isn't going to wait until you're ready." I closed the door. I leaned against it. And for the first time in my life, I felt real fear of my own daughter. Because she wasn't hiding anymore. She wasn't pretending anymore. The public humiliation had been her way of telling me, "I don't care what you think anymore. I'm going to do what I want, and everyone is going to applaud me." But she didn't know something. That the women of my generation learned to survive worse things than a daughter's betrayal. And that when you have nothing left to lose, you become dangerous. While I was agonizing in the hospital, she was changing the locks. Everything happened one night in October. I remember the exact date. October 17th. Because it was the day I almost died, and the day I lost my home. That afternoon I felt strange, a crushing weight on my chest that wouldn't go away with the pills. Cold sweat, dizziness. I called Natalie 3 times. No answer. At 9 o'clock at night. The pain became unbearable. I called Mrs. Carroll with the last breath I had left. "Mrs. Hope, my goodness, don't move. I'm calling the ambulance now." The next thing I remember is bright lights, distant voices, the high-pitched sound of a siren, and darkness. I woke up 3 days later in intensive care. Tubes everywhere, the constant beeping of the machines, a nurse checking my vital signs. "Don't worry, Mum. You had a severe heart attack. You're stable now, but it was very serious." Natalie arrived on the 4th day, not the 1st, not the 2nd, the 4th. She was wearing dark sunglasses even though we were indoors. She sat next to my bed with that expression I already knew, rehearsed concern. "Mum, you gave us a terrible scare." "Where were you?" My voice came out hoarse, barely a whisper. "I was at a medical conference in Miami. I came as soon as I could." Lie. Mrs. Carroll told me later that she had called her the same night of my heart attack. Natalie chose not to come. The following days were a haze of pain, medication, and loneliness. Robert came once, uncomfortable, with flowers that he left on the table without saying much. The children never appeared. Only Mrs. Carroll came daily. She brought me soup, combed my hair, held my hand. "Your daughter is a doctor, and I, who barely finished elementary school, am the one taking care of you." What an irony, right, Mrs. Hope? Natalie showed up occasionally, always in a hurry, always checking her phone, always with that air of making a great sacrifice. I was hospitalized for 12 days. 12 days between life and death. 12 days in which, as I found out later, Natalie had been very busy. The day I was discharged, Mrs. Carroll was the one who picked me up. Natalie had an urgent surgery. Robert offered his car, but she needed it. We arrived at my house at sunset. The lemon tree looked beautiful in the golden sunlight. My neighbour's rose bushes peeked over the fence. Everything looked the same, until I tried to open the door. The key didn't go in. I tried again. Nothing. Mrs. Carroll, something is wrong. She tried too. The lock had been changed. A chill ran through my body that had nothing to do with the weather. I rang the doorbell. No one answered. I knocked on the door. Silence. "This can't be happening," I murmured, feeling my legs giving out. I called Natalie. She answered on the fourth ring. "Mum, what's wrong?" "I can't get into my house. The lock—" "Oh, yes. I had them changed, for security. While you were in the hospital, I couldn't leave the house vulnerable." "And my keys?" A silence. Too long. "I have them. But, Mum, we need to talk. You can't live alone anymore. The heart attack was a clear warning. Natalie, open the door. It's my house." "Mum, calm down. It's not good for you to get upset. Look, I already spoke with a lawyer. With the power of attorney you signed, Ed, I have the authority to make decisions about the property if your health is at risk. And clearly it is." The world stopped. Mrs. Carroll held me because I was literally falling. "What did you do?" "What I should have done months ago. I transferred the house to my name. It's legal, Mum. Everything is in order. I did what was best for you." I couldn't breathe. My chest was burning again. "I found you a perfect place. A residence in New Jersey. Clean, safe, with nurses. The first month is already paid. You can move in tomorrow." "Natalie, please." "This is not negotiable, Mum. You almost died. Do you want me to find you stiff on the floor of your house 3 days later next time? Because that's what's going to happen." Every word was a slap. "I'll stop by tomorrow at 10 o'clock to take you to see your new home. Pack only what is necessary. Clothes, personal documents. I'll handle the rest." "Natalie, you can't do this to me." "It's already done, Mum. And deep down, when you get over your tantrum, you'll thank me." And she hung up. I stood there, in front of the door of my own house. The house I paid for with 40 years of work. The house where I buried my youth, my dreams, my marriage. Mrs. Carroll was crying next to me. "This can't be legal. It can't be." But it was. Because I signed. Because I trusted. Because I was a fool who believed that a mother's love was reciprocated. That night I slept on Mrs. Carroll's couch. She lent me pajamas, made me chamomile tea, and let me cry on her shoulder until I had no tears left. "Tomorrow we're going to a lawyer," she told me. "This is not going to stay like this." But I knew the truth. Natalie was a doctor, respected, with resources. I was a sick old woman who had signed papers without reading them well. Who would believe me? My daughter had kicked me out of my own house while I was agonizing in a hospital. And the worst part, she did it with complete coldness, as if I were already dead. They locked me up like trash. But my mind had never been clearer. The New Dawn residence had nothing new or dawn about it. It was a grey 3-story building in a forgotten neighbourhood of Newark, with rusted gates and a smell of cheap disinfectant that couldn't hide other, worse odours. Natalie left me at the entrance with 2 suitcases. "It's temporary, Mum, until you stabilise." Lie number 1000. I was assigned a room on the 2nd floor, 12 square feet that I shared with another elderly woman named Sue, who wouldn't stop praying the rosary out loud day and night. A hard bed, a tiny closet, a window overlooking a pizza parlor's parking lot. That was all. The first few days were a silent hell. I spent my time sitting on the edge of my bed, staring at the hospital green walls, feeling my soul slowly fading. The food was horrible. Watery soup, chicken tough as shoe leather, stale bread. Nothing like my chili, my filter coffee, or Mrs. Carroll's freshly made biscuits. Natalie came every 2 weeks, 15 minutes exactly, never more, never less. She checked that I was taking my medication, signed papers, and left with a smile of duty fulfilled. See, Mum, you're safe here, cared for. Isn't that better than being alone in that huge house? I didn't answer. I no longer had the strength to fight. But then I met Mr. Allen. He was an 82-year-old man, thin, with a perfectly trimmed white moustache and blue eyes that still shone with intelligence. He used an elegant wooden cane and always dressed in a shirt, even if it was just to go down to the dining room. I found him one afternoon in the residence's back garden. I was sitting on a bench, watching the senseless hours pass. "May I?" he asked, pointing to the space next to me. I nodded without much enthusiasm. He sat down with a sigh, took out a handkerchief, and cleaned his glasses. "I hate this place," he said without preamble. "But I suppose you do too." Something in his tone made me smile for the first time in weeks. "Does it show that much?" "Ma'am, you look like someone whose life was stolen. I know because I have the same look." And so began our friendship. Mr. Allen had been an employment lawyer for 40 years. His wife died 5 years ago. His only son, a successful engineer in Seattle, put him in the residence for his own good and kept his condo in Bellevue. He sold it for $450,000. He gives me $300 a month for my expenses. Do you know how much this place costs? $800. He pays the rest and keeps everything that's left over. It was my story, with different names, different numbers, but the same script. Over the next few weeks, Mr. Allen became my confidant. I told him everything: the 15 years of sacrifice, the paid loans, the power of attorney, my stolen house. He listened with a lawyer's attention, taking mental notes. "Hope, what they did to you is financial abuse, possibly fraud. That power of attorney you signed was temporary and specific. It did not give her the right to transfer property. But you signed under pressure while you were sick and vulnerable. That can be fought." For the first time in months, I felt something akin to hope. I also met Lucy, a 35-year-old nurse who worked the night shift. She was the only employee who treated us like people and not like furniture. One morning she found me crying in the hallway. I couldn't sleep. Sue's snoring and the weight of my loss were suffocating me. "Mrs. Hope, what's wrong?" I told her everything. Between tears and contained rage, I told her everything. Lucy squeezed my hands. "My grandmother went through something similar. My uncle took her land in Texas. She died of sadness 6 months later. Don't let that happen to you." "But what can I do? I don't have money for lawyers. I don't have the strength." "You do have strength, and you have witnesses. I've seen you. You are lucid, clear. If your daughter says you're senile, it's a lie, and that can be proven." Mr. Allen, Lucy, and I began to meet in secret, in the garden during the nights when everyone else was sleeping. "We need to document everything," Mr. Allen said. "Every visit from your daughter, every word she says. And we need to find witnesses to confirm the condition of your house, the real value, the circumstances of the transfer." "I know lawyers," he added. "Good ones, the kind that fight lost causes. But we need to build a solid case." For the first time in months, my brain started working again. I wasn't the defeated old woman Natalie wanted me to be. I was Hope, the woman who survived her husband's death, who raised a daughter alone, who worked triple shifts without breaking. And if I could handle all that, I could handle this. "What do I need to do?" I asked, with a voice I hadn't heard in a long time. A firm voice. Mr. Allen smiled. First, stop crying and start documenting. Second, contact people who can testify in your favor. Third, he paused dramatically. Make your daughter so confident that she makes a mistake. Lucy took out her phone. And I can record. When she comes, when she talks, everything you need. Something changed in me that night. Pain transformed into determination, sadness into strategy. Natalie had taken my house, but not my dignity, and much less my ability to fight. I stopped crying, and I started documenting every lie. Mr. Allen got me a small notebook. You're going to write down everything here. Dates, conversations, broken promises, everything. I became a detective of my own life. First mission, get copies of the documents I signed. Mr. Allen had a contact in the public registry who got us copies of the power of attorney and the property transfer for $500. When we read them, Mr. Allen slammed the table with contained fury. I knew it. This power was temporary, 6 months maximum, and only for basic medical and banking matters. It never gave her authority to transfer property. This is pure fraud. Then I can get my house back. If we can prove there was coercion, abuse of trust, and that you were vulnerable, yes, but we need more than this. Lucy turned out to be an invaluable ally. When Natalie came to visit me, she found reasons to be nearby. Organizing medications, checking vital signs, always with her phone in her pocket, recording. In one of those visits, Natalie complained to the residence director. My mother needs more sedatives. She gets anxious, combative. She doesn't want to accept her reality. Lucy recorded everything, including the part where Natalie added, "The less lucid she is, the better for everyone." Those words crushed me, but they also gave me ammunition. Mr. Allen taught me something important. The most dangerous enemy is the one who is too confident. Natalie thinks she's already won. That will be her downfall. My cousin Rachel was the next key piece. I called her from the residence's public phone. "Cousin, I need your help, but it has to be a secret." Rachel came to see me a week later. She pretended to be a new resident visiting the facilities. We sat in the garden like two strangers. I gave her specific instructions. Talk to the neighbors of my old house, especially Mrs. Carroll. Get testimonies of how I lived, of my mental state, of how Natalie pressured me. And there's something else, I added. I need you to go to the notary where the transfer was done. Ask who was present, what documents Natalie presented, and if I was there. Rachel squeezed my hand. They're going to give you your house back, cousin, I swear. 2 weeks later, Rachel returned with information that changed everything. Mrs. Carroll gave a heartbreaking testimony. How she found me passed out, how Natalie took days to come to the hospital, how she saw men changing the locks while I was agonizing. Mr. Frank, my lifelong neighbor, confirmed that I was always perfectly lucid, that I took care of my house, paid my bills, and lived independently. But the most important thing, Rachel spoke with the notary. Hope, your daughter presented the power of attorney and a false medical certificate that said you were in a state of advanced dementia and could not make decisions. You were never present at the transfer. My blood boiled. A false medical certificate. She, being a doctor, had falsified documents. That's a serious crime, Mr. Allen said when I told him. With this and the recordings, we have a solid case. But we needed one more thing, for Natalie to sink herself with her own words. Mr. Allen designed a plan. You're going to ask her to come. You're going to tell her you're ready to sign more papers, that you accept everything. You're going to make her feel secure, and then you're going to ask her specific questions while Lucy records. It was risky, but it was our only chance. I called Natalie. I faked a weak, defeated voice. Honey, I need to see you. I want to settle some pending papers. About the house. I heard her smile on the other end of the phone. Of course, Mum. I'll come on Saturday. I'm glad you're finally being reasonable. That Saturday, I set up the perfect scene. I asked the director to let us use the private visitors' room. My daughter and I need privacy for legal matters. Lucy hid her phone behind a vase in recording mode. When Natalie arrived, she was carrying a new folder. More papers for me to sign, surely. Mum, you look better. The rest is doing you good. I swallowed my anger. I smiled like the foolish old woman she thought I was. Honey, I've been thinking a lot. About the house, about everything. I'm glad you came to your senses. I just have a few questions. The house was worth $350,000, right? More or less. But with the repairs it needed, I sold it for $280,000. Lie. Mr. Allen found out that she hadn't sold it. It was in her name, waiting for the perfect moment. And where is that money? Natalie sighed with annoyance. Mom, it's invested. For your future, or for when you need more care. Can I see it? The investment papers? Her face changed. You don't need to see anything. I'm taking care of everything. That's what you gave me the power for. Remember? Yes, but that power was temporary. For medical emergencies. It was for whatever I deemed necessary. Her voice hardened. Mum, we're not going to start this again. It's just that I don't understand, honey. I worked 15 years to pay for your career. Why do I feel like you're now charging me for every dollar I invested in you? The silence was heavy. Natalie put the folder on the table. Do you want the truth, Mum? I nodded, feeling my heart racing. And then she let slip everything I needed to destroy her. I set a stage, and she fell for it, like the ambitious woman she always was. Natalie leaned back in the chair, crossed her legs, and looked at me with a coldness I will never forget. You want the truth? Fine. It's time for you to be realistic. I maintained my composure. Behind the vase, Lucy's phone kept recording. Mum, you already fulfilled your function. You paid for my career. That was the only thing I really needed from you. It was your obligation as a mother, wasn't it? To give me the tools to succeed. Every word was a knife. The house should have always been mine. I'm an only child. Eventually it was going to be mine. I just sped up the process. But you left me with nothing. My voice trembled. I didn't have to fake it. I left you with a roof, food, and medical care. What more do you need at your age? Why waste money on an old woman who has no future? There it was. She had said it, in those exact words. Besides, let's be honest. You already lived your life. You raised your daughter. You got married. You worked. That's it. Now it's my turn to enjoy what belongs to me. And my last years? My memories in that house? Natalie let out a dry laugh. Oh, Mum. Memories are in your head, not on four walls. Get over it. I took a deep breath. Mr. Allen had prepared me for this. Push her more. Make her let go of everything. And if I hadn't signed that power, what would you have done? Her smile twisted. I would have found a way. A dementia certificate is not hard to get when you know doctors. A signature here, another one there. Mum, I'm a doctor. I know how the system works. She had just confessed to falsifying documents. But you made things easier for me by signing. You were always so trusting, so naive. She leaned forward. Look, I'm going to tell you something I never told you. Those 15 years you worked like a dog for me. I never asked you to. It was your decision to sacrifice yourself. I just accepted the gift. It was your education, your future, and I thanked you by being successful. But I don't owe you my entire life for that. I'm not going to be your pension or your company just because you decided to invest in me. Tears ran down my cheeks, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of contained rage. The children, Steve and Amy, what did you tell them about me? The truth, that you're old, that your mind is failing, that it's better for you to be where you'll be taken care of. They understand. They don't need a senile grandma in their lives. Senile? Natalie, I'm perfectly fine. Really? She laughed cruelly. Then why are you locked up here? Why did you sign everything I put in front of you? Why is no one in the family defending you? She stood up. She grabbed her bag. Because everyone knows I did the right thing. Poor Natalie, burdened with her sick mother. What a sacrifice. What dedication. No one questions anything. She walked towards the door but stopped. Oh, and about the money from the house. It's not invested for you. I used it as a down payment for a condo at the beach in Florida. Robert and I needed a place for vacations. You don't need vacations anymore, Mum. You just need a place to die in peace. She opened the door. I'll see you in 2 weeks, or maybe 3. I have a very busy schedule. And she left. I remained seated, trembling, but not from fear, from power. Lucy ran in 2 minutes later. I got everything, every word, Mrs. Hope. Mr. Allen appeared behind her. He had been listening from the hallway. It's enough. We'll sink her with this. Rachel was there too. She had come to give moral support. She was crying with indignation. That wretch! How can someone be so cruel to their own mother? That night, in my shared room with Sue and her endless rosaries, I listened to the complete recording. Every venomous word, every arrogant confession. Natalie had fallen into the perfect trap. Her arrogance had blinded her so much that she didn't see the blow coming. Mr. Allen brought in his contact. Mr. Martin Baker, a 60-year-old lawyer, grey-haired, with a bulldog face and a reputation for never losing cases of financial abuse. He listened to the recording in silence. When it finished, he took off his glasses and cleaned them slowly. Mrs. Hope, this is pure gold. Confession of fraud, falsification of medical documents, aggravated financial abuse, dispossession. Your daughter is not only going to lose the case, she may face criminal charges. Criminal charges. She's a doctor. Falsifying medical certificates is a serious crime. She can lose her professional license, her career. I felt a small flicker of doubt. She was my daughter, after all. But I remembered her words. An old woman who has no future. How long will it take? I asked. With this evidence, the testimonies, and the documentation we already gathered, we can file the lawsuit this week. The normal legal process would take months, but with such compelling evidence, I can request immediate precautionary measures. What does that mean? It means we can freeze the house, prevent her from selling or mortgaging it while the case is being resolved, and hopefully have a ruling in 3 or 4 months. 3 or 4 months. It seemed like an eternity. But after what had happened, I could wait. Let's do it, I said with a firmness I hadn't felt in years. Mr. Allen smiled. There's the hope I knew, the one who doesn't give up. We signed the papers that same afternoon. The lawsuit was filed the following Monday, and I prepared for war, because Natalie didn't know who she had messed with. She thought she had destroyed a weak old woman, but she woke up a lioness. Justice did not come from the sky. I built it with my own trembling hands. The legal notification reached Natalie's hands on a Tuesday morning. She was in her office when the court officer knocked on her door. I knew because she called me 30 minutes later, furious, like I had never heard her before. "What in the world did you do, Mum?" Her voice trembled with rage. I remained calm. Mr. Allen had trained me for this moment. "Taking back what's mine, Natalie. Do you have any idea what you just did? The ridicule you're going to put me through? I'm a respected professional. You're a thief, and now the whole world is going to know it." Deadly silence on the other end. "You're going to regret this. I'm going to prove you're demented, that you were manipulated, that—" "I have recordings, Natalie, of everything you said, of how you confessed to falsifying documents, of how you called me a worthless old woman." I heard her breathe heavily. Then she hung up. Mr. Baker had done an impeccable job. The lawsuit included dispossession, fraud, aggravated financial abuse, falsification of documents, and financial violence against a senior citizen. The precautionary measures worked. The house was frozen. Natalie could not sell it, rent it, or mortgage it until the case was resolved. But the best part came later. Robert called me 2 days after the notification. His voice sounded tired, ashamed. "Mrs. Hope, I need to talk to you alone." We met at a coffee shop near the residence. Robert had deep, dark circles under his eyes. His hair was messy. He wasn't the neat man I knew. "I didn't know anything," he said before sitting down. "I swear on my children that I didn't know how she had treated you. The house, the false documents, nothing." "How is that possible? You live with her." "Natalie hid everything from me. She told me you had signed voluntarily, that you were happy at the residence. I wanted to believe her." He looked down. "But when the lawsuit arrived and I read the accusation, I confronted her." "And what did she say?" "She went crazy. She screamed that you were ungrateful, that after everything she did for you, that's how you repaid her. I told her, what did you do for her? She paid for your entire career." Robert pulled an envelope from his briefcase. "I found this in her study. Documents she planned to use in her defense. The false medical certificate she presented to the notary. Emails where she was getting quotes for the condo in Florida, using the money from your house. Everything." He handed me the envelope. My hands trembled as I opened it. "Why are you giving me this?" "Because I have a mother too. And if someone did to her what Natalie did to you, I would want them to pay. Besides," he paused for a long time, "Steve and Amy found out everything. They heard the recording presented in the lawsuit." "And how are they?" "Devastated. Amy won't speak to her mum. Steve is in therapy. It broke their hearts to know that their grandmother needed them, and they believed the lies. Tears came without warning. They are not to blame. I know, that's why I want you to know that they will testify in your favor if necessary. And I will too." Robert became a key witness. He, who had lived closely the transformation of Natalie into a cold and calculating woman. The trial was set for mid-December, 3 months after we filed the lawsuit. The courtroom was packed. Natalie arrived with her lawyer, a guy in an expensive suit who looked more like a salesman than a litigator. She was wearing dark sunglasses, as if she were a victim of something. I arrived with Mr. Allen on one side, Lucy on the other, and Rachel behind me, my little army. The judge was a man in his 60s, with a serious demeanor. He first listened to Natalie's defense. Her lawyer tried to paint me as a senile old woman manipulated by strangers who wanted to take my money, that Natalie had acted out of love, protecting my assets. Then it was our turn. Mr. Baker presented the recordings. In that silent courtroom, Natalie's voice resonated like thunder. "You already fulfilled your function. It was your obligation as a mother. I'm not going to waste money on an old woman who has no future." I watched Natalie sink into her chair. how her lawyer closed his eyes in resignation. Then came the testimonies. Mrs. Carroll cried, recounting how she found me passed out. Mr. Frank confirmed my mental lucidity. Rachel narrated the systematic manipulations, but the final blow was Robert. He presented the documents Natalie was hiding, the false medical certificate with a forged colleague's signature, the emails about the condo in Florida, everything. My wife did not act out of love, Robert said with a firm voice. She acted out of ambition. And the worst part is that she destroyed the only person who truly loved her unconditionally. Natalie tried to speak. She stammered something about misunderstandings, about misinterpretations. The judge raised his hand. Enough. Amy and Steve were in the room. Amy was crying silently. Steve looked at me with a mixture of shame and sadness. After 2 hours of presenting evidence, the judge withdrew to deliberate. He returned 30 minutes later. I have carefully reviewed all the evidence presented. The recordings, the testimonies, the documents, and my verdict is clear. I felt my heart jumping out of my chest. The house is returned to its rightful owner, Mrs. Hope Garcia. Furthermore, the defendant must pay compensation for moral damages of $45,000, plus the medical expenses that Mrs. Hope had to cover alone during this period. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Additionally, I have ordered a criminal investigation into the falsification of medical documents. The case will be referred to the corresponding district attorney's office. Natalie jumped to her feet. This is unfair. She manipulated me. I only wanted to protect her. The judge looked at her sternly. Dr. Smith, I suggest you remain silent. Your own words condemned you. And just like that, in that cold courtroom, I got my life back. I didn't just recover my house. I taught her the meaning of losing everything. The ruling fell like a hammer on Natalie's perfect life, and I was there to see it crumble piece by piece. The first thing was her reputation. The case was leaked to the media. Not with all the details, but enough. Doctor strips sick mother of her assets. The headlines were merciless. Her colleagues at the Cedar-Sinai Hospital found out. Murmurs started in the hallways. Patients began cancelling appointments. Who wants to be treated by a doctor capable of doing that to her own mother? The hospital administration asked her to take some time off. An elegant euphemism for, "We don't want your scandal here." The criminal investigation advanced quickly. The colleague whose signature she forged on the medical certificate filed charges. The medical board opened a review process for her professional license. Natalie, the successful cardiologist, the respected professional, was collapsing. But what hurt her the most was losing her family. Robert filed for divorce 2 weeks after the trial. He told me when he came to help me move back into my house, I can't stay with someone capable of this. The values I thought we shared never existed. And the children? They're with me. Natalie can see them, but with supervision. They themselves asked for it that way. The day I returned to my house was bittersweet. The property was intact, but it felt empty, cold, as if the months of abandonment had stolen its soul. Mr. Allen, Lucy, Rachel, and Mrs. Carroll helped me clean, air it out, and bring it back to life. Robert brought back furniture that Natalie had taken out. Steve and Amy came to help too. "Grandma, forgive us." Amy cried in my arms. "We believed her lies. We thought you—" "Shh, my girl. You are victims too. She fooled everyone." It was Steve who told me the worst part, or perhaps the best, depending on how you looked at it. Mum had to sell the condo in Florida. She needed money to pay your compensation and her lawyers. She lost everything she invested. Poetic justice at its finest. The place she bought with the money from my house, the symbol of her betrayal, she had to sell to pay me back. A month after the trial, Natalie tried to visit me. She arrived alone, without warning, in the middle of the afternoon. I saw her from the window. She looked destroyed, thin, with unkempt hair, wrinkled clothes. She was no longer the neat and successful doctor. She rang the doorbell. I didn't open immediately. I let her wait. When I finally opened the door, she stood there, not knowing what to say. "Mum, What do you want, Natalie? Forgive me. I need you to forgive me. I lost everything. My job, my marriage, my children hate me. I have nothing." Those words, the same ones I could have said months ago. "And you come seeking forgiveness because you need it, not because you are truly sorry?" She cried, real tears this time, without calculation behind them. I don't know what happened to me. Ambition, money, wanting to give my children what I didn't have, I got lost along the way. You had everything, Natalie. A mother who worked herself to death for you, an education that opened every door for you. But it wasn't enough. I know, and now I lost everything. I looked at her. I really looked at her. And I saw a broken woman, but I didn't feel the urge to hug her, to comfort her as I would have before, because some wounds are too deep. Natalie, for months I wondered what I did wrong, how I failed as a mother for you to reach this point. But now I understand that it wasn't my fault. I gave you unconditional love. You chose to turn it into a commercial transaction. Mum, please. I won't deny you forgiveness, but I won't forget either. You can continue your life, rebuild what you destroyed, but don't expect me to be there to pick you up every time you fall. She took something out of her bag. A key. It's for the house, the last copy I had. I took it. Do you know what the saddest thing about all this is? That if you had asked me for help, if you had been honest with me about your money problems, I would have found a way to help you. Because that's how mothers love, unconditionally. I know, she whispered. That's why it hurts more. She turned to leave, but stopped. The children want to see you. Robert says it's okay. Tell them I'll be expecting them on Sunday for lunch. I'm going to make barbecue. She nodded and walked away, slowly, hunched over, as if carrying the weight of the world. Did I feel pity? Yes. She was my daughter, after all. Did I completely forgive her? No, because true forgiveness takes time, and some betrayals leave permanent scars. That night, sitting in my living room, with a hot cup of filter coffee in my hands, I looked around. My house, my home, recovered. Mr. Allen had died 2 weeks after the trial. His heart simply stopped while he slept. But he died happy, knowing that he had helped win one last battle. Lucy kept visiting me. She was no longer my nurse. She was my friend. Rachel came every week with donuts and neighborhood gossip. Mrs. Carroll continued to leave me little plates of food on my doorstep, even though I no longer needed them. I had lost months of my life. I had suffered betrayals I never imagined. But I had also found something I didn't know I had. Strength, dignity, the ability to get up when everything seemed lost. Natalie took my house for a while, but I took something from her that she will never be able to recover. Her peace. Because now she will live the rest of her life knowing that she destroyed the only person who loved her without asking for anything in return. And that is the true poetic justice. At my 78 years old, I learned that it is never too late to defend yourself and never too early to reap what you sow. 6 months have passed since the trial. 6 months in which my life has been rebuilt in ways I never imagined. My house is full of life again, not in the way I expected, but in a more authentic, more real way. Sundays became sacred. Steve and Amy come for lunch. I teach them to make biscuits by hand. I tell them stories about when their mother was a child, the good stories before ambition consumed her. Grandma, why did Mum change so much? Amy asked me one afternoon while we were grinding the spices for the barbecue sauce. Sometimes, my girl, success makes us forget where we come from. Your mum got lost along the way, but that doesn't mean she can't find herself again. Do you think she will? That depends on her. I've already done my part. Robert also comes once in a while. He feels guilty for not having seen the signs, but I don't hold a grudge against him. Mrs. Hope, if I had known. Stop, dear. The important thing is that you were there when it mattered. That is worth more than any apology. With the compensation Natalie paid, I was finally able to afford my complete medical treatment. The medicines I really need, the regular checkups, a dignified life. I still work, but now by choice, not necessity. I sell my cupcakes on the weekends because I like it, because it's my tradition. The people in the neighborhood say they are the best in Queens. Mrs. Carroll and I became inseparable. We share coffees in the afternoons, laugh at the soap operas, and keep each other company in the silence. Mrs. Hope, you are the bravest woman I know. I wasn't brave, Carol. I just stopped being afraid. And it's true. For years I lived in fear of bothering, of asking, of claiming what was mine. Fear that my daughter would stop loving me if I wasn't the perfect, sacrificing mother. But that fear almost killed me. Literally. Now I live differently, with my head held high, knowing that my worth is not in what I can give, but in who I am. Natalie is rebuilding her life, slowly. She got a job at a smaller clinic, with a much lower salary. The criminal process ended with probation and community service. She lost her license for 2 years. I see her from afar sometimes. We cross paths at the market, on the street. We greet each other with a nod. Nothing more. Do I love her? Yes. She's my daughter. That doesn't change. Do I trust her? No. And perhaps I never will again completely. Do I need her? Not anymore. And that was the most liberating discovery of all. One did see. 3 months after the trial, a letter arrived at my door. It was from Natalie, handwritten, not printed. Pages and pages of apologies, acknowledgement, and pain. Mum, I don't expect you to forgive me. I'm not even sure I deserve it. But I need you to know that I carry what I did every day, not because of the judge's sentence, but because of the sentence of my own conscience. I destroyed the most valuable thing I had for things that are worthless. The condo, the money, the prestige. Everything is gone. But you are still there. And I am here, alone with my decisions. Maybe someday I can look you in the eye without feeling this shame that is eating me alive. In the meantime, I just want you to be happy, to live in peace in the house that was always yours, your daughter who learned the hardest lesson. I put that letter in the drawer where I keep my treasures. I didn't throw it away, because forgiveness is a process, not an event. The lemon tree in my yard bloomed this month. Mr. Allen once told me, the trees that survive the strongest storms are the ones that bear the sweetest fruit. He was right. This story, my story, is not just about a recovered house or a daughter who betrayed. It's about finding strength when you thought you had none left. It's about knowing that your dignity does not depend on how much you give, but on how much you respect who you are. It's about understanding that true love never humiliates, never strips you of your assets, never destroys. And it's about learning that sometimes the families we choose are stronger than blood families. Today, at my 78 years old, with my weak heart but my unbreakable spirit, I live every day as a gift. I take care of my geraniums, prepare my filter coffee, greet my neighbors, and hug my grandchildren. And when I sit in my living room on that couch where I rocked baby Natalie, I no longer feel pain. I feel peace. Because true wealth is not in what you possess, but in what you don't allow them to take from you. Your worth, your dignity, your right to be treated with respect. Those things no one can steal from you unless you let them. And I no longer allow anything. If this story touched something in your heart, if you ever felt that you gave everything for someone who didn't value it, or if you know someone who is going through something similar, leave me a comment telling me your experience. I would love to know which part of the world you are listening to me from. And remember, it is never too late to defend what is yours. It is never too late to recover your dignity. It is never too late to bloom again. Like this video if you think hope did the right thing. Subscribe to the channel for more real stories that need to be told. And share this with someone who needs to hear that they can get through it. Because sometimes, the best victories are not the ones that come easy. They are the ones you build with your own trembling hands. Until the next story. And remember, your life is yours. Defend it.